Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. We are exploring the Iliad, a story which is many thousands of years old, yet nevertheless is as fresh as today's news. Helen, the beautiful daughter of Zeus, has left her husband Menelaus and chosen to go across the sea with the beautiful prince Paris of Troy. The Greeks then demanded her return, but were refused. And so what will happen next? Well, we will find out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving life to this story by your attention. A story which is music for the soul, which is a map of our aggressions and our love and our conquests and the beauties and follies we are capable of. Thank you for being here with me. Let us begin. Well, a year passed, and in that year all the kings of Greece gathered a great army, an army larger than any that had ever been seen on this earth. And this army gathered at Aulis, where there was a great harbor, and there were 1,000 ships in this harbor, brought there by every king, every kingdom of that wide and beautiful land known as Greece. And there were spears and swords and chariots and horses. All was prepared. And when all seemed ready, all the kings of Greece gathered in the great purple tent of Agamemnon. And among them were all the suitors of Helen, all those who had gone to Sparta seeking to be her husband, all those who had stood in that circle around the dead horse, with Helen, the daughter of Zeus, beautiful, standing before them. Ajax was there, mighty Ajax from Salamis, and little Ajax from Locris, and Antilochus, the son of Nestor of sandy Pylos, and Diomedes of the smoldering eyes, and Idomeneus from Crete, and Machaon, the great healer, and of course the red-haired king of Sparta, Menelaus himself, and Menestheus, the king of Athens, and Odysseus from the small rocky island of Ithaca. Philoctetes was not there. They'd had to leave him behind. It's a whole nother story. But Protesilaus was there, the fiery, impetuous one, and Teucer, the young and ambitious archer. And wise Nestor was there as well, who'd been given 3 lifetimes by the gods. And Phoenix, the clever one, who everyone called the good teacher. They were all there, and many more besides. And then Agamemnon said, "Friends, we have assembled a great fighting force. It seems everything is ready. It seems we have everything we need. It seems victory is certain. With an army this large, with so many ships, it is certain that Troy will fall, and her riches will come to us. But still, there is the unseen world. Still, there are the moods of the gods and the spirits. And so we must consult with the seer. And so, Calchas, come, tell us, look into the unseen world, tell us what you know." And Calchas the seer stood up, a man known for his abilities to see into the past and the future, to see between the folds of the present moment, and divine the secrets of the gods. And he stood amid them all with his great staff, and he closed his eyes for a moment, and something flickered inside him, like the shadow of a hawk. And then he opened his eyes and he said, "Defeat is certain, my king. Defeat, ruin, death for us all. That is what I see. All because there is a single man who is not a part of this army." "What?" said Agamemnon. "One man? It all depends on one man?" "It seems so," said Calchas. "There is a warrior who is not here, a young man named Achilles, from the kingdom of Phthia. His father's Myrmidons have come, those faultless and beautiful warriors, but Achilles is not here, and without him, defeat is certain." "Well then," said Agamemnon, "let's go to Phthia and get him and bring him here." "Well, the thing is," said Calchas, "it's not that easy, because he is not in Phthia, but on the island of Skyros. His mother is Thetis, the goddess of the deep waters, and she has brought Achilles to Skyros and hidden him there. Years ago, she saw that a war would arise, and she wishes to keep her son away from this war. She has told him that if he stays on that island for an entire year and learns the arts of song and music and dance, he will enjoy a long and uneventful life, far from the arts of the sword and the spear, a life that will be quiet but secure. This is what he believes. But I know better, and so does Thetis. For in fact, unlike other mortals, Achilles has been given a choice. He can choose. Either he can enjoy a long, quiet life, or a short, eventful life filled with action and with glory. That is the choice before him. If he chooses to live this short and glorious life, well, he will do great deeds that will be sung about for thousands of years by bards of all kinds. That is the choice before him, though he does not know it. "Well, all right then," said Agamemnon. "Let's go to Skyros and get him. Can you see where he's hiding?" "Well, that's the trouble," said Calchas. "Every time I look, I hear bells and I see white cloth and hear dancing music. That's all I see. He's got to be on that island, but where exactly, I'm afraid I just can't see." "We'll find him," said Agamemnon. "Nestor, I would like you to go. You for your wisdom. And Ajax, you must go for your strength. And Odysseus, you must go as well for your cleverness. Go to Skyros, find Achilles, and bring him back here. If you fail, doom, it seems, is certain." And so Nestor, Ajax, and Odysseus got in a boat and sailed across the sea away from Aulis to the small island of Skyros. And they got out and walked up the beach and into a thick forest. And that forest was alive with the buzz of insects and the songs of birds. And as they walked, before long they heard the voices of young women singing, a sound carried to them on the wind, along with the jangle of golden bells. And they followed these sounds through the forest until they stepped out into a clearing, and there was a beautiful palace, its windows thrown open to the sun, a palace of white stone, the light in the air flowing through it. And they walked up to the front door and knocked on it, and guards let them in. And they walked down a long hallway, the song becoming louder as they walked. And then they stepped out into a beautiful throne room. And there in that room were 9 young women dressed in white, singing a beautiful song and dancing in a circle. And all of them had long black hair, except for one who had golden hair. And their song, as they sang it, called into itself the roots of the trees, and the stars in the sky, and the waves on the sea. Their song summoned into itself all the seasons of the year, and the worm and the flake of snow, and the driving rain, and the music of the clouds drifting through the night air. And after a while this song turned quiet and folded itself up like the petals of a flower after the sun has gone down. And then in that room there was only silence, and the 9 dancing girls bowed before the king and the queen and stepped aside. And then Nestor, Ajax, and Odysseus approached the king and queen. And Nestor declared their purpose, how they had come in search of Achilles, a great warrior, who they needed for their expedition against Troy. And the king said, "I am King Lycomedes of this island of Skyros. I am glad you are here. I welcome you. You're welcome to do whatever you wish, really. I haven't heard of this man Achilles. I don't think he's here, but you're welcome to look wherever you would like." So they thanked him, and then they began to look. And Nestor searched through the palace, and Odysseus searched through the one village on that island, and Ajax searched through the forests and the hills and the swamps of that island. And after 3 days they had still not found him. So they all went to the boat and pondered what they should do. And Nestor said, "Gentlemen, this reminds me of a situation I was in when I was a young man, back when I had the strength that you fellows have now. For as you know, I've been given 3 lifetimes by the gods. It was like this." And Nestor began to tell one of his long, complicated, and long stories about an exploit he had been involved in when he was a young man, an adventure he had had. And this story went on and on, like a hallway in a palace that seemed to have no end. It went round this corner and that corner, and there were tiles and stones and new levels to this story. It went on and on, but then suddenly there was a side door, and they went through it, and there finally Nestor said what he really wanted to say, which was, "Gentlemen, I think we should return to Aulis and get Calchas the seer and bring him back here. This is my advice. For once he is standing on the shore, or perhaps in the palace itself, I am sure by his magical abilities he will be able to find this man Achilles and lead us right to him." Well, they all agreed to this, and so the three of them, together with the sailors, began to prepare the boat to set sail. And when all was ready, when they were about to push off from the shore, Nestor looked around and suddenly said, "Wait a minute, where's Odysseus?" "I don't know," said Ajax. "He was here a minute ago. Where could he be?" Well, meanwhile, back at the palace, there was a knock at the door, and the guards opened it, and there was a peddler there, an old man with a large sack over his back, and he said, "I bring trinkets and baubles for the dancing girls." "All right, come in, old man." So he came into the throne room there. "Trinkets and baubles, jewels, necklaces, beautiful things for you. You're as beautiful as the stars. These things are beautiful too." And he laid down a purple cloth on the floor. And this old peddler, somewhat slowly, began to take things from his sack. And he took 2 earrings in the shapes of golden horses and put them down on the cloth. And he had a necklace of turquoise and bracelets of cowrie shell, just beautiful things. And he took a dragon-handled dagger. It was gold. He put it down on the cloth there. And other things as well, scarves, beautiful cloth, all kinds of wonderful things. And the dancing girls came, and they looked at all these things. Oh, they oohed and ahed. They began to try them on. A bracelet here, a necklace here. Oh, these are quite lovely. These are great. "Yes, look all you want, dearies. Look all you want. You have beautiful things, all for sale, as beautiful as you are. Yes, wonderful things." And then he went to the king, and the peddler said, "Excuse me, king, I'm feeling the call of nature. Is there a place or any?" "Yes," said the king, sort of rolling his eyes. "Go back down the hall, through the kitchen, in the garden. There's, out there." "Thank you," said the peddler. "You get old, things kind of whatever," said the king. So the peddler left the throne room, walked down the hall, and was gone. And the dancing girls kept looking at everything there. "Oh, this is very nice. Oh, what do you think? These bracelets for me? No, this. It goes better with your eyes. Try that on there. This necklace. Lovely, lovely." And all of a sudden there came a shout from outside the palace. "Surrender yourselves! We have you surrounded!" And suddenly they froze with fear. Everyone was mystified. What was happening? And then the shout came again. "Surrender yourselves! We have you surrounded!" And then 2 burly guards, standing near the king and the queen, they unsheathed their swords and began to move towards the door. But before they got there, the dancing girl with long golden hair bent down, seized hold of the dragon-handled dagger, and leapt over the purple cloth, and ran through the throne room, past the guards, through the door, down the long hallway, out into the light, and there was the peddler. Looking a little taller, in fact, and not as old. And the peddler stood there and looked at this golden-haired dancing girl and said, "You must be Achilles." And the dancing girl, who was in fact Achilles, said, "And you are no peddler." "It's true," said the peddler. "My name's Odysseus. There's a war on, boy. All the kings of Greece have assembled at Aulis. It's the largest army this world has ever seen. We are sailing across the sea to Troy, all because Helen, the daughter of Zeus, has been stolen away. But though it is a large and impressive army, still our seers tell us that death and destruction are certain unless you join us, unless you go with us across the sea. And I know your mother has told you that if you spend a year on this island, you will then live a long and quiet life free from trouble. But I have come to say that, in fact, our seers tell us that you have a choice before you. The gods have given you this. You can lead a long, quiet life, or you can choose a life of glory, a life in which you will accomplish great deeds that will be remembered for thousands of years by bards in many lands. So I come to you now, offering you this choice. Come with us, Achilles. We need you. Glory awaits." "Glory and death," said Achilles. "Death for the Trojans," said Odysseus. "Glory for us." "You said that all of Greece is there," said Achilles. "If so, are my father's Myrmidons from Phthia there as well?" "Yes, they are there. Those cunning and beautiful warriors are all there. They're led by a man not much older than you, a dark-haired man. His name is Patroclus." "I will come," said Achilles. "Let me get my things." And so a golden-haired dancing girl in a white dress walked back into the palace. And a little while later, a young man in a red and gold cloak walked out of the palace, carrying a lyre and a bag. And just as they were about to enter the forest, Achilles turned, and he said, "Goodbye, Skyros, goodbye. You have been kind to me." Well, they made it back to Aulis, but they had a hard time of it, for the winds were contrary, always blowing against them. And there at Aulis it was no different, the winds coming unpredictably out of strange corners of the sky, as though the anger of a god was what drove them. And so a year passed, the entire army waiting there at Aulis. Achilles spent this time getting to know all of the Greek kings, learning from them and trying his skills against them, so that often he would cross swords with Diomedes or Machaon, or even great Ajax himself. And he also learned from Phoenix, who everyone called the good teacher. And in the evenings Achilles would play his lyre and sing, or he and Patroclus would sit down at a table and play games with their green dice, as they always had done since they were boys. And then one night, in the darkness, the wind turned calm. And then, in the pre-dawn hours, when the blue light was soaking into the sky, Odysseus awoke before all the others, and he saw that in fact a good wind was blowing, a wind that would take them clear across the sea and straight to Troy. So that very day, all of the soldiers pushed their boats off from the sandy shores of Aulis and out into the waves. And they raised their sails, and soon that great fleet was sailing across the sea, straight towards the distant kingdom of Troy. And in the depths of the ocean, happy in her freedom, Thetis, the goddess, was swimming. And she heard a noise above her, and she looked up, and she saw that great fleet moving through the water. And fear gripped her heart for her dear son, Achilles. And in Troy, days later, the Sibyl was walking, the woman who could see into the unseen realm, walking amid the flowers of her garden. But as she did so, she felt a tremor move through the world. And she looked around her, and for a moment it seemed that every flower, leaf, and tree in her garden was on fire. And the next day, as Helios, the sun god, drove his chariot into the sky, a watchman stood in a tower at the very height of Troy. And as dawn came, he looked out at the sea. And suddenly, he saw a ship. And then he saw another, and then hundreds more. So he gave a great shout, and he pulled on a rope, ringing a bell. And soon all the bells of Troy were ringing, that shimmering sound echoing down the streets and into the throne room, where Priam sat in a golden chair, as a messenger ran and stood before him, and gasping spoke and said, "Your Majesty, the Greeks are coming." Who are you, really? Who are you? We put on uniforms. We sign up for relationships, jobs, ideas. And then sometimes we find that those uniforms no longer fit. And then if we're lucky, if we are able, we jump from that railroad train and land in the grass and pick ourselves up and are hopefully largely unharmed, but maybe not. And then we set out for a new place. I know that's happened to me. As a kid, I was a Boy Scout. I wore the uniform. I went every Wednesday to the Boy Scout meeting in the basement of the school. I saluted the flag. I said the Scout law. Was I excited about that? Was that who I really was? Well, not really. It was something my parents thought was a good idea. We got to go camping every month, which most of the time I enjoyed. It wasn't something I was radically opposed to at the time, but I also was fairly easygoing, I think. I wasn't quite sure. It was something I was exploring. Or playing the violin. That's another example from my life. I played the violin for 10 years, till I was 17 years old. I kind of enjoyed it, but not all the time. It was scary to give recitals, and I didn't always know the songs as well as other people did, and I would feel bad about that. It was all right, but it wasn't like amazing, and I wasn't, again, completely opposed to it. Maybe someone else would have stood up and said, "This is not for me," but I didn't do that. But around the old age of 16 or 17 years old, I discovered the electric guitar. I discovered rock music. And so that was the choice. Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, or Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, Van Halen. Wow. Well, was that a choice? It wasn't a choice when you're 17 years old, when you're 16. It wasn't a choice for me. I was like, that's for me. I see, powerful artists with cool clothes getting money and power and playing amazing music in front of thousands of people. Do I want that, or do I want Bach, Beethoven? Now, I'm older now, and now, eventually, I was like, oh, Beethoven's way cool. I would say that to you now. Beethoven is way cool. Bach is way cool. So, yeah, but that's myself now. And, I got older. I was looking for different things. But at the time, I was going along, doing the violin lessons every week, recitals, playing in an orchestra. And then suddenly I was like, whoa, there's this other world. Amazing. And I have to say, I dropped that violin like a stone, and I've played it maybe 3 times since then. Sort of like, I still have it. I've tried to sell it. Anyway, it's another story. So, yeah, we go along with things, and then suddenly it's like, boom, this is who I am. I knew a guy once, I mean, there's probably lots of people like this, but he said he walked out of a job interview because halfway through he was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to waste your time. I've realized this job is completely not for me. And he stood up and walked out of the room. I'm not like that. I tend to go along with things, which is sometimes a bad habit, a bad trait to have. Other times it helps you survive. I think that's my strategy, is to give the powers of this world what they want as much as I can, and then to run off and do my own thing that I really care about later, or in secret, or in disguise. Sometimes that strategy doesn't work. And I know people, my wife would be one of them, who are incapable of playing that game. And that is amazing. I respect them and honor them. Right? I mean, do you know people like this? Are you one of these people where you just can't do it? You can't stomach it. Everybody's like, oh, go into information technology. That's what you should do. Or everybody's like, oh, sign up for this corporation. Everybody's doing it. Work this desk job. And there are people who are just incapable of playing that game, incapable of the restraint necessary to do something they don't want to do. To say, sure, I'll file papers for you. Sure, I'll alphabetize those files for the next, 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. Yeah, so there are people who just can't do that. I'm not one of them. I'm someone able to repress my desires. Ooh, ouch. Someone able to keep those strong feelings at bay, to have restraint and be like, okay, I'm going to file these papers and I'll play my rock and roll later on. Ooh. I'm not saying that's a good strategy. I'm not saying it's a better strategy, but it is a strategy. And so we have Achilles, who is a dancing girl, and suddenly signs up to be part of a war and be a warrior. What's going on with this? Who is he really? Is that what he wants? Does he really want to be a singer and a dancer, a dancing girl? Girl in this context is somewhat of a fuzzy term. I mean, he's wearing a dress, he's got long hair, but all of the Greeks have long hair. Homer repeatedly refers to the Achaeans, who are basically the Greek army, the long-haired Achaeans, he calls them. Or Achaeans, excuse me. So long hair is not a big deal. Wearing the dress, I guess that's what it is. I mean, just as a side note here, gender roles in the ancient world are not really a thing. I mean, okay, let me back up. Well, they are a thing, for sure. But ideas about sexual preference and that sort of thing are much more fluid than they are for us. And a man sleeping with another man, I'm not an expert on this, but my impression from the ancient world is that things are much more flexible. And beyond that, gender in general is more fluid in the ancient world. I think I can confidently say that. Zeus falls in love with a boy, Ganymede from Troy. Not a big deal. Achilles has a male lover, Patroclus. Again, not a big deal. So we see some of these things as radical, and, well, maybe that's good for us. Maybe it jolts us. It gets us out of our boxes of gender to which we have unknowingly signed up or agreed to. But in the ancient world, it's not such a big thing. That's what I hear. That's what I read. That's what I understand from the stories. So in any case, Achilles is as a dancing girl on the island of Skyros. And suddenly, Odysseus shows up in disguise, gives him these objects to choose from. He chooses the dagger. So it's like a divination. It's like a method by which for him to access his deepest self, his deeper self, we might say. Is that what it is? I'm thinking of how this is done in parts of the world even today. You're looking for the next Dalai Lama, and you would go through the villages. You would follow certain signs, and you put out objects before the child, and the one they pick up says something about their past life, says something about their role in the world. This is not just a Tibetan thing. It's a thing, in many cultures around the world. So we see that here. It's a little ceremony for Achilles to reveal himself, as if Odysseus is saying, well, you think you're a dancing girl, but who you really are is this. And he chooses the dagger. Is that what's going on? Well, possibly. Is the dancing girl thing all a mistake? A hideous, wrong-headed thing? Well, I don't know. Maybe he needs to do that. Never give a man a sword who cannot dance. That's what the Irish proverb says. Never give a man a sword who cannot dance. Ooh. Is dancing the first thing you do at West Point, at the military academy, at boot camp? Do you dance first? I don't think so. Not these days. And I'm reminded of Arjuna in the great epic of India, the Mahabharata, who also spends a year as a dancing girl in disguise. And then goes on to fight this big war. Arjuna has to do that because of a curse. He's been cursed by a goddess. Yet also he's in disguise. There's a requirement for him and his brothers to be in disguise. So they spend a year basically as their opposites. Ooh, that's a healthy thing, I would say. Spend a year as your opposite. How big are you? How big is your personality, your life? How much can it embrace? Become your opposite and find out. So Achilles is on Skyros and is found out by Odysseus. And as a storyteller, if I can, take you backstage for a second here, it's a little complicated to figure this out. Well, not complicated. It's a little, it doesn't all fit together. Because Homer in the Iliad describes how Achilles was given a choice by his mother Thetis, the goddess of the deep waters. And the choice is, well, you can live a long and obscure and comfortable life back home, or you can live a short, glorious life in which your actions will be remembered for thousands of years, but you will live a short life. You will die young. Better to burn out or fade away. That's what Neil Young wrote in his song. He said it's better to burn out than to fade away. Well, that's the choice for Achilles. So Homer in the Iliad describes how, or explains that Thetis, the goddess, gave her son Achilles this choice. Yet, outside of Homer, we have this story which I quite like, of Achilles spending a year as a dancing girl. So the question arises, and also I should say, in Homer it does say, she put him there to hide him, to keep him from the war. She put him on Skyros. She told him to do this to keep him safe from the war, so he wouldn't have to go off and fight. Although, correction, I'm not exactly sure that's in Homer. It might be in Apollodorus. I'm quite certain it is, actually, and in other classical sources. So just to recap, so you're not lost, Homer wrote the Iliad, right? And it's this huge, big story, and it's very detailed, and it's beautiful. And it has all the specifics. As a storyteller, it's great. It's like, Achilles put on the left sandal and then the right. And then he buckled on his sword and he stood up and went outside. It was raining. It's fantastic. This world is so real and vivid. It's just tremendous. Yet, we know there were other versions of these stories told. We don't have those preserved in such detail, but we do have summaries of them by others. There's a guy named Proclus, Proclus. There's a bard named Stesichorus from the 6th century BC. There's Apollodorus, who's a later writer, but he wrote a sort of handbook to all the myths of the time, which is tremendously valuable to us because he describes stories which don't occur in Homer, even though Homer clearly knew of them, whoever's people's Homer was. So anyway, that's where some of these other stories are. So it's wonderful, and it's also sort of tantalizing as a storyteller because we don't have the details, the actual specifics. We just have, well, Thetis hid Achilles for a year on the island of Skyros as a dancing girl, so that he would not have to fight in the war. That's basically all we have is a sentence like that. So it's up to me, to us, to you and me, with our imaginations and our hearts and souls and our feet on this ground, our knowledge of this earth we live in, our knowledge of people and everything, to figure this out. So it's quite possible these stories are opposed. It's quite possible there are just different versions and they don't actually fit together. But I'd like to fit them together because I'm telling this story. So I have altered it somewhat. I mean, because the question is, what's he doing on this island if his mother has already given him the choice? What is he doing being a dancing girl unless he has himself chosen, okay, I'm going to live a quiet life. I'm going to hide from this war and live a quiet life. Well, that's one possible interpretation. And if so, then his grasping of the dragon-handled dagger and the way he runs out the door is a mistake. He gives himself up, though he does not wish to. That's one interpretation. But I choose this one, which is that his mother, Thetis, hasn't actually told him yet. She's deceived him by saying, you are going to live a quiet life, and one thing you need to do is learn how to sing and dance. So, hey, spend a year here. And he, just like me in the Boy Scouts, just like me with the violin there under my chin, my knees shaking at the recital, with all the parents watching me as I played wrong notes, Achilles just goes along with it. He's like, okay, Mom, sure. Other sources tell us he's about 15 years old, when he goes off to the war. Crazy. So that's pretty young. So anyway, in my... American modern mind, that could be an age where you're like, okay, Mom, sure, I'll just do this. And then he's like, no, wait, I want to be a rock star. I want to be a warrior. I want to be a fighter. So that's how I have chosen to reconcile these stories. Again, imagining that Thetis has not told him this choice yet. She's just said, you're going to live a quiet life. She's hid this knowledge from him. Because it is known to the fates, and she does know it. She does know it is a choice, but she has hid this from him out of a desire to keep him safe. Oh, yes. We want to keep our children safe. And sometimes sometimes in our efforts, we might stifle them, I suppose. Parsifal as well. Just to jump the story here. Parsifal, the medieval epic, beautiful story. In that story as well, the mother of Parsifal keeps him hidden in the forest. She moves away from all the castles and the palaces and all that stuff and doesn't say anything to him about knights in armor because his father was a knight who was killed in a battle, and she does not want that to happen to her son. So she keeps him on the farm. In the farm and in the sticks, as we might say, away from the centers of power, away from the cities, with no knowledge of knights in armor. And then what happens? Well, I have to tell you. Then what happens is knights in shining armor come galloping through the forest. They are beautiful. Their armor is fantastic. They're just strong, powerful, beautiful men. They're on a quest. A lady has been stolen away by an evil man, and they're going to liberate her from this man. Parsifal sees these knights coming, and he thinks they are angels. They are so beautiful. He bows down before them, and he begins to pray. Seeing them, seeing the sun shining on their beautiful armor, seeing the beauty of those horses, those chocolate brown horses with their eyes flashing under the green leaves of the trees of the forest. He begins to pray. And the knights stop, and they're like, what are you doing, you idiot? We're not angels. We're knights. For King Arthur, this is what we do. We're going to save a lady. And the story begins. And of course, Parsifal's destiny is to follow this path. It is not to remain in the forest, but is to follow in his father's footsteps, in a way, and become a knight. So I'm putting that in here because these stories are trees rooted in the ground, and their roots sometimes meet and talk to each other. Sometimes they are different expressions of a single thing. So Achilles is there on this island, and he gets found out by Odysseus, and he picks up that dagger, and off he goes. And why he does that? Well, that's the question, isn't it? It seems to be the revelation of a deep instinct on his part to be a fighter, That could be one explanation. Or he just likes the dagger. That could be another one. Or he seeks glory. He wants to, again, I'm going to say it this way, he wants to be a rock star and not a quiet man living in a little village far away. That's what I put it together to mean. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to figure Achilles out here, and maybe you are too. Does he hate the Trojans? No. He says that quite clearly in the Iliad. He gives a speech very similar to that of Muhammad Ali, the boxer, a famous boxer, 60s and 70s, who was opposed to the Vietnam War, and said, I've got nothing against the Vietnamese. They never came to my town. They never, beat me up or stole money or anything. So I think of that speech, and Achilles gives a similar speech during the war when he chooses not to fight. He's like, I've got nothing against these Trojans. I'm just here because of you, Menelaus and Agamemnon, defending your honor. That's what he says. So what motivates Achilles? That's the question. What motivates us? So what I come up with is that either he believes the propaganda that the Trojans are evil, which doesn't really fit, doesn't really work for me. And as I say, goes against some other things he says. Or he chooses glory. He wants to be famous. He wants to be a man of consequence, a person of consequence. And so I'm back to that rock and roll future. I'm back to the stuffy music, classical music I learned, and the flash and the sizzle of the rock and roll I saw. And again, please remember, I don't feel that classical music is stuffy anymore. It's filled with love and life and lust and anger and craziness. It really is, honestly. But I'm just saying, that's the choice Achilles seems to make is, okay, I'm going to choose glory. I'm going to choose to be a rock star. And off he goes. And another thing I'd like to just point out here is the whole thing of divination, which we've talked about in other podcasts around the Iliad. But it just keeps coming back. It keeps happening. The Greeks are ready to go. They've got a whole army, thousands of ships. They're ready. Let's go clobber Troy. That's what we're going to do. Bang, bang. They're ready to go. But before they go, Agamemnon is like, we have to consult the unseen world. Yeah, check it out. This journey can't happen. This expedition can't happen without checking in with that world. This is something we find in the stories. It's something that was actually true in the classical world. Armies, military leaders, politicians, they would rarely take a significant action without consulting with a seer, a diviner, someone who can read the signs given to us by the natural world, by birds, by animals, snakes, or they would go to Delphi, where the dragon priestess would inhale the fumes of the earth herself, and then speak in a heightened and wild language, telling you the answer to your questions. So, as I've said before, but hey, it's worth saying again, in the modern world, we like to think that we have total choice over our future. We like to think that it's up to us. And that's a beautiful and a troubling idea. There's a lot behind that. We like to think we're in possession of all the facts. And yes, accidents happen. Yes, there's bad people out there, quote unquote. But for the most part, we can choose our fates. Whoa, that's what we tend to think. That's how we operate. I mean, ask yourself. Tell me, what do you think? Is that true? I'd love to hear what you think. But I'd say, for the most part, that's how we operate. Which presupposes a lot. It supposes that we have all the facts and that we can have all the facts. Even if we don't, we can do the research. We will know. We will go online. We will figure out we'll look at the road map. We'll go to Google Maps. We'll figure out the weather, our trip to whatever, Dallas, Texas, the drive we're going to take. It's all, I got it, I got to figure it out. But the ancient Greeks and many people now in other parts of the world don't labor under that idea. Their understanding would be that, well, half of life is dark and unknown. I cannot know it. So I have to trust in what? In the gods, in the spirits, in the great mystery. I have to find a way to access these larger knowledges, these larger understandings. I've been listening to Martine Prechtel, a marvelous teacher who was raised on a Pueblo Indian reservation in New Mexico and then was trained as a shaman in Guatemala for 15 years. And he speaks of divination as a means by which to see the larger picture, because we are incapable, with our narrow human minds, incapable of seeing the big picture before us. We can't see all of reality. So how are we to make a good decision without checking in with the bigger picture? That's why we have the I Ching, why we have tarot cards, all kinds of divination. It's not to know the future. It is instead to look deeply into the present and to see the situation we're in a larger way. As Jung would say, it's a means to access the unconscious, but it's larger than that. It's a way to take a look at the non-human forces, the unseen elements in the picture, so that we can make a good decision. And of course, I probably don't need to tell you, our opinions about this are not just cultural, but they're also just based on the relative security we live with. Speaking as someone who grew up in upstate New York in America and who lives there now, by and large, my life is secure, more or less, more secure than many folks in the world, knock on wood, I mean, yes, uncertainty comes, right? Cancer diagnoses come. My mom had cancer. Bad things happen, sure. But, a lot of folks in the world have a much harder time of it because they're in a war zone, they're in a refugee camp, all kinds of things, right? I don't need to tell you. People in this country, right? It's not just America. I mean, it's just whatever. I mean, the less stable your life is, the more you are likely to ascribe to the understanding that you're not in control of your life. Because you look around and you see what happens to people and you're like, well, yeah, it's true. Look, this guy died, that lady, whatever. There's this story I've told before, but it's a real story, it's a true story, about folks in Colombia, in the jungle there. And there was a library that would deliver books to villages on the backs of donkeys. And every now and then the donkey train would come through and there'd be books and people could borrow them and then return them sometime later. Well, they did this and there was one book which just didn't come back. And this village had it forever, a long time. And so they finally went, the librarians, and they asked about this. And the book was the Iliad. It was not the Odyssey. They had the Odyssey. They returned the Odyssey, but they held on to the Iliad. And the librarian was like, why is this book so dear to you? And the folks in the village said, well, this story describes what life is like for us. It describes what life is like for us, which is that we feel our lives are governed by enormous powers which are ultimately unknowable. Gods, governments, wars. And this is the world we live in. We are just doing our best and making decisions and taking action, but we are subject to forces larger than ourselves who make large decisions and boom, people are wiped out. They die. Good or bad things happen. So I find that a marvelous anecdote. It's a true story, right? Because that is the world of the Iliad and the world in which the gods, Zeus falls asleep and Hera is able to change the tide of the battle and thousands of soldiers die who wouldn't have died otherwise. That's coming up, by the way. So, spoiler alert. So, because of this, that's why divination happens. That's why we consult with the unseen world. And so, for me and for you, perhaps, for us, we might consider this idea that we're in charge of our lives and consider the ways in which we are not. And considering that, we might wonder how to act. Well, we still act. We still make choices, of course. That's what people do everywhere. That's what humans do. It's what hawks and mice and snakes do as well, I would say. But we should act with humility. We should act with humility towards the world, towards this great mystery we are involved in, where we live. Knowing that the apple on the branch is a miracle. Knowing that the bird flying through the air is miraculous and a wonder. And that chance happens. and that wild events can come to pass. Because the trouble with thinking that you are in charge of your life is that you're limited by your ability to imagine. You're limited by what you think is possible. You grow up in a small town, let's say somewhere in America, here in upstate New York or Illinois or Iowa, and you look at the possibilities, the potential before you, and you're like, oh, well, I'll live in this small town forever. I can be what? I can be a car mechanic. I can be a piano teacher. I can be a computer guy, an IT guy. I think I'll be a baker. Yeah, every town needs a baker. I'll be a baker. So you live your life and you're a baker, and that's your goal. You study hard how to bake good bread and rolls and stuff, and you've got a bakery and everything's cool and people love you. But then the circus comes to town. Let's imagine it. Let's say a circus comes from Nigeria with members from Nigeria and France. They're traveling and they come to your town. And there's jugglers and magicians and lion tamers and all kinds of things. There's shining, beautiful costumes, and people look stylish and cool, and they're funny, and they laugh a lot, and they sing songs late into the night and tell stories about the time they went to the jungles of Cameroon and did a gig there, or the streets of Paris, the cafes they played in Bristol, in London, in Manchester, in Berlin. So they blow into town, and you're there working at the bakery, and you thought you were happy, but there's this other possibility. It's like, whoa, I like to juggle. I actually do juggle in back of the bakery on my breaks. And so you join the circus. And the circus is nothing in your upbringing prepared you for the existence of a circus such as that. So that's the world we live in my experience, where our own ability to imagine what's possible is limited, and suddenly unforeseen things can happen. And sometimes they're horrible, but sometimes they're beautiful also. And that too is possible for us. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We will continue the story of the Iliad. Yes, oh man, I'm hoping to get to it. I'm doing some traveling right now, but I'm hoping to keep forging ahead. There's many beautiful things ahead. If you're seeking more stories, you can find them on my website, jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. If you're able to support this podcast, please do so. Support it. It sounds like you're holding it up. Well, you are. And the people who have been able to be generous and give money to this podcast, I thank them. It's the reason I'm able to do these large stories like this, because of their support. You can do that at patreon.com/storyjl. Patreon.com/storyjl. And it gets you free admission to online performances of mine that I do. So that's where we are. Thanks for listening to this boulder rolling down a hill. Thanks for listening to this song of a bird out there in the swamp. You hear it. You're not sure what it is. Is it a bird? Is it something else? What is that sound? What is that sound? You listen for a while. There's a moon out there. There's clouds. There's darkness. And the sound comes one more time. And then it's gone. And for the rest of your life, you never hear it ever again.